Hello everyone, welcome to the DraftCast, the place to get all your news about the draft events of the week. This week, we've got the manager of Chkn Tikka Mo Salah on, Laurence Hodgkins. Welcome, Laurence.
Thanks for having me, Luke. It's great to be on the pod.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Sorry I'm a bit late. We had a visitor at the club from Raul.
Right.
To see the training. So great to see that he's making a bit of a recovery, and we hope to see him back on the pitch very soon.
Good to hear. So we'll do a review of the league table. We'll do a review of your team. We'll do our team and player of the week predictions, and then you've brought your own segment, and we'll get onto that at the end. So this week in the league table, not much movement, but quite an interesting week, I think, in terms of scores. There's quite a bit of contrast, I think. Some really high scores and some not so high scores, shall we say. So we had Rich taking his DraftCast luck and getting the highest score of the week. I got bottom of the week this time, but yeah, not a great week for a few players not playing and all that. But yeah, well done to Rich.
Yeah, for sure. I think it shows the impact of the rotation that's going on within the league at the moment. There's so many fixtures coming thick and fast.
Yeah.
The predictions from last week that went into this week, obviously, no one really predicted that Rich would be up there with highest points for the week, myself as well, with so many injured players. But I guess it just goes to show how unpredictable the league can be this season, given COVID and all the congestion in the fixtures.
Yeah, considering Son didn't play for you, you've done really well.
Yeah, that would have been nice actually, but because I had Alderweireld as well, and he was rested last game week, so I was hoping he would come in and start, and hoping that would get me another, up to 10 points potentially with Son. But yeah, bit of a shame, but just hold on to those players for when those game weeks come back round, and hopefully there'll be double game weeks, even triple game weeks for some teams in this season, which will be, I think, tactically from a manager's perspective, thinking about those players that have got those extra fixtures to come through, whether it's worth bringing them in. I think we saw it a couple of times last season with, I think Liverpool had a couple of double game weeks, and people were signing Henderson and Wijnaldum and all these different players just to maximise their points. So it just adds an extra dynamic for the managers going into the second half of the season.
Yeah, we've now got a very small gap out between first and fifth. There's only 29 points covering those five managers. So if it stays like that for the rest of the season, that would be really good title contention.
Yeah, I think Jack might have mentioned it when he was on the pod, but just with 10 managers in the league this season, it just makes it so much more difficult to really make your mark, because the quality players are gone so quickly, and you're left with sort of some players that you wouldn't necessarily have picked in a slightly smaller league. So
yeah,
it just shows the quality is being spread out a lot more evenly amongst the teams.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll move on because I don't think there's much else to cover really in the league tables this week. But we'll do a review of your team and how they've done this week. One of the questions I have for you is: you're still holding on to Raul. You've mentioned him already. Are you gonna ride that wave and hold him out until he's back, or are you gonna get rid of him at some point, do you think?
I don't think I'll get rid of him anytime soon. I'm optimistic that he'll be back before the end of the season, and I don't really want to be sending him to agency when there's not really anyone else to pick up.
That is true. That is the problem. Yeah.
The challenge. If it was a midfielder or a defender, it'd be slightly different. It's just all the strikers have been taken, and it would be. We've seen it already with Luca Digne. I traded him out, and Jack very sensibly picked him up, ready for the second half of the season to slot into his back four. So yeah, I can kind of see why other managers might suggest I trade him out, but I'm also thinking off the back of, hopefully this game week I'll have James Rodriguez back, which means that I've only really got one injured player, which is Raul in my one injured player in my team, which is Raul. So I think I can carry him for the time being. And given where I am in the league, I think it makes sense to be positive and hope that he'll come back second half of the season. And if he doesn't, then that's my decision, I guess. But I'm going to hold on to him.
Fair enough. Well, talk about your strikers. You've got Ings in still. his form's not been great the last few game weeks. Are you going to keep holding on to him, or do you think you're going to look to try and trade him out for a more informed player?
No, I'll hold on to him. Form is temporary, class is permanent, as they say.
Yeah.
I think he's, you've got to factor in the fact that he's been injured. He was injured against City and injured against Fulham. And he was carrying injury against Arsenal as well. So, he played 90 minutes against West Ham, which was a big surprise. I didn't see him getting through the 90 minutes or even starting, to be honest. He was a red flag going into the last game week. So I can only be happy that he's fully fit and, got some decent fixtures coming up after the next couple of game weeks. So I think I'll be holding on to him and he'll be a definite starter for me.
Yeah, I would advise the same. Having had him last season, he's definitely worth trying
and
to
he won me the cup, right?
He did win you the cup, yeah. You had to bring it up.
I can't just trade in my cup winner. He deserves a chance, particularly with his assist off the post in the semis. So.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't got any other questions. I suppose me probably surprised you this week with his 15 points.
I don't know. Burnley centre halves last season were great, and I think they've obviously had a poor start to the season, but they're starting to get clean sheets, and they're very dangerous from corners and set plays. So, he's a good player to have, and I think Will has Tarkowski, who also got a couple last season. So, I think Burnley's back four generally are pretty strong. Announcement today that the club's being taken over by an American conglomerate. So, there might be some budget for them to buy in January. They could become a stronger team in the second half of the season. So, really happy with his performance, particularly when Wood and Barnes aren't particularly doing much up top. It's crucial that their defenders get in on set plays, and it's a big part of their strategy. So, he's done well, and not sure who else has done so well this week. Rashford got a last-minute winner against Wolves.
Yeah.
They're quite lucky, but he's starting to hit some form. I think he's in the top 10 sort of players of the league this season so far. So hopefully he'll sort of crack on second half of the season.
Do you think the Burnley game will go ahead this week with Fulham?
I think it probably has to. I think it's getting to the point where if we postpone any more fixtures, it's where do you fit them in?
Yeah.
Don't forget, before the end of the season, you've got to get all the fixtures in before the Euros, which were rescheduled from last year. They've got to be played at some point. So I think there'll be a lot more squad rotation. I'd love to be a fly on the wall to understand why or where these breaches come from within the bubble. But I guess, we'll never really know that. I foresee it going ahead, I think, this week.
Okay, well, we'll find out on Sunday. Well, probably Saturday, I guess they'll make an announcement if it's not going ahead, but we shall see. You never know. It could be another game might get cancelled at this rate.
Potentially. There's talk of a 2-week circuit break, isn't there? But I just don't see how that's feasible, given the congested fixture list already. The testing that's already in place across the teams. But who knows? You never know this year, do you?
No, not at all. I think we'll move on to some predictions for this coming week. Do you want to start with your player? Who do you think is going to top the player of the week?
Good question.
Yeah, I had a look back over and all the big names haven't actually really, got player of the week. I think last time Son did was game week 2. It's always someone you don't expect.
It's an interesting one. So I've got Guaita in goal, who's been in great form the last couple of weeks, and we're playing at Sheffield United, a team that just can't seem to find the back of the net. So he's also regularly getting save points, so there's a good chance he will do well this week. Same with me at centre back against Fulham. If they have got COVID cases and they have to rotate their squad, then Burnley are very solid at the back, and he could do well again, and even score from a set play. And we know how bad Fulham are at defending set pieces. So it could be one of those two. Not big names. I'm hoping that James Rodriguez makes a comeback on New Year's Day. He's not played for 4 or 5 game weeks now, I think. So if he slots back in, he could be a contender if he plays well. And yeah, I think some of the other games are a bit tricky. Tottenham against Leeds. I think Mourinho will tactically set up to play on the break, so Son could benefit from that. But as you say, he's not been in the best of form recently. And then Danny Ings will be playing against Liverpool, whether he'll do well in that particular fixture with Liverpool's defensive issues with their centre backs at the moment. There is potential. So there's plenty of players in there that could have a good week. But as you said, it's never really. It's very difficult to predict what might happen.
Yeah. Okay then. What about the team? Of all our 10 teams, who do you think will get another top week?
It's hard to bet against Rich at the moment. He's hitting some form. He's climbing up the league. Zaha really on form. I think just have a quick look who Palace have got. I think they've got Sheffield United at home. So I think that could be a winner for Rich this week if he keeps consistent. He was played really well in midweek, so he could be one to look out for this week in terms of points. Cavani is playing really well for United and probably is in with a starting shout. So he could be a contender for some points this week. So yeah, I think I'm going to back Rich this week, and fingers crossed for him. Yeah,
you could be right. I'm going to back George this week. I think he's still riding some form, so we'll see if he can keep that going. I don't really know who to go for as a player. I've written Vardy down. I'm not sure how Leicester and Newcastle will get on, but you never know. He's on form. His form rating is still pretty high, so who knows?
Yeah, although he came in off the bench last game week, didn't he? Because he was rested. So yeah, that's a good shout. I mean, Newcastle set up quite defensively under Steve Bruce, so it's whether he can get in behind. I still think Zaha against Sheffield United. I think pace up top, stretching their back four. I think he's a really good shout for good points this week.
Yeah.
Burnley, Fulham. You always look at the sort of lower teams as to where the points might be. I don't see Burnley really banging them in. Against Fulham, they just struggle to find the net at the best of times. So I don't think it'll be from that game per se. Arsenal could potentially have a good week against West Brom if they can maintain some form. I wouldn't necessarily bet on Aubameyang because he's not had the best of seasons so far. Maybe Lacazette is in for a shout given his season periods midweek. It's difficult to know. You never know, do you?
No, I mean we do this every week, and I don't think we've had one right yet. So. That'll be the week. That'll be a good week when someone gets one right.
that'll be the stats review at the end of the season. The pod predictions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll move on to your segment that you've brought along. Do you want to introduce what you've brought?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to. I think we're about 16 game weeks into the season now. So I wanted to look back at the original drafted teams and see where league positions might be compared to where we are now. So if you'd kept the original 15, if you'd taken the strongest 11 players of those 15 into a formation that works within the draft, and where would you be right now versus where you actually are in the league after game week 16?
Nice. I think Adam's going to like this. He's going to like this chat.
Yeah, it's really interesting what the outcome is. Won't spoil it right at the start, but it's up to you. We can go through individual teams, or we can look at it very high level in terms of a summary. We can talk about the formations that teams would have landed with. What do you think?
I think we just do. What can we do? I think maybe just if we run down in the league positions that we've got at the moment. So if we start with Jack, who's currently on 707 points in total.
So Jack is the biggest winner from the original draft. So with the original draft, he would have had 539 points, which means that he got 168 points more than he would have had he kept his original team.
It's good going. That is good going.
And Jack would have been eighth. in the league had he kept his original team.
Okay. So I'm next then. What about me? So I'm on 685 points currently.
Yeah, so you would have been, again, you're better off. So you would have been on 601. So the variance there is 84. And you would have been fourth.
Okay.
So you've done well to be in second at the moment.
Yeah. And then we've got, me and Jim are joint second at the moment. So he's on the same, 685.
Yeah, so Jimmy would have been third, so same league position, but he's better off by 63 points. He would have had 622 without any changes to his draft team, and he's obviously on 685.
So trying his best to throw the league away, it hasn't actually made a difference. That's what you're saying.
Pretty much, he's been he's exactly where he should be, given his original draft.
Next, we've got yourself in fourth with 680.
Yeah, so I've done quite well as well. So without any changes, I would have had 561 points. So there's 119 gained in the original draft, which is it's interesting. So I would have been fifth. So not much difference actually in terms of league position, but in terms of points, it's quite significant. Not quite 168 that Jack's got. In terms of difference, but 119 is pretty respectable.
Yeah, that's good going. We've got Rich at the moment in fifth with 678 points.
Yeah, so Rich, how did Rich do here? So based on the original draft, he would have been second with 638 points, but he's actually done better off by 40 points.
Yeah.
So he's obviously fifth at the moment. But had we taken the league position based on the original draft, Rich would have been second. Which is quite interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting how, even though you've still got more points than he would have done, it's like overall everyone's got more points than they would have done if we'd kept the original drafts. So
there's only one player that has less points. Which, I won't spoil that just yet, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah. So next we've got Tolly, who's on 647 points as it stands.
Yeah, again, so he's so without any changes, he would have been on 550 points. So variance of 97. So he's gained 97 points off his decisions so far this season, and he would have been seventh had the original draft been in place. So he's slightly overachieving based on that, but yeah.
All right, next we've got Will with 632 points.
Yeah, so with the original draft, he would have been on 555 points, so a gain of 77, and he would have been sixth in the league had there been no changes in teams since the original draft. So he's actually one place down from where he would have been with the original draft, but with more points.
Yeah. Next, we've got George with 622 points.
Yeah, so George is the second highest mover. So his original draft team would have got him 470 points so far. So there's a gain of 152 points based on the decisions he's made so far this season.
That's a good job.
And he would have been rock bottom with the original draft team.
Well, I'm sure he'll be happy with that when he hears this.
It's huge. I think that's a huge, percentage-wise, it's probably the biggest difference compared to Jack. So
yeah. And then next we've got Tom, who's on 593 points at the moment.
So he's on 593 points. But had he kept his original team, Luke, he would have been on 658 and top of the league.
Wow.
He's currently ninth. So he's lost 65 points as a result of his decision making, which super interesting. He would have been top by 20 points over Rich, and maybe we'll go through the league table with the original drafts at the end. But Tom would have been top, and he's obviously ninth at the moment.
Yeah, so not a good stat for Tom, this one, but it's interesting. It is interesting. And then we've got Adam at the bottom at the moment with 580 points.
Yeah, so slight gain of 59 points on his original draft, so he would have had 5-2-1, and obviously he would have been ninth in the form table or in the table. Had he stuck with his original draft team versus everyone else. So he's obviously doing slightly worse than he would have done had nothing changed from the start of the season. But I'm sure second half of the season he'll start to pick up points. So in terms of the table itself, had all the teams stuck to their original drafts, Tom would have been top with 658 points. Rich would have been second with 638. James would have been third with 622. Luke, you would have been fourth with 601. I would have been fifth. Will sixth. Tolly seventh. Jack would have been eighth. So obviously, huge gains there.
Yeah.
Adam would have been ninth, and George would have been rock bottom with 470. So it's interesting, and I've sort of set out what each team has in terms of formation and their players, which players have done well, which players haven't done so well.
Yeah.
So if you want to go into any of those details, just maybe pick a team, we can have a look.
I suppose we'll pick Jack. He's done the biggest gain. I think we don't need to look at everyone's. We'll just look at who's Jack's done that biggest gain. So we'll see what where that's come from, shall we? Yeah.
So Jack's original team, the highest scorers in those teams, was Salah, obviously, 123 points so far this season, followed by Robertson with 79, Chilwell with 72, which I think he's traded to Jim. Patricio was his goalkeeper with 53, Richarlison 47, and I can go through each of the players if we need to, but the players that haven't featured are Fraser for Newcastle, Iheanacho, Dubravka and Pereira. So those four are the players that wouldn't have featured in his starting 11 over the course of the season so far. So he would have had a 4-5-1 formation with Antonio up top. He would have had Robertson, Chilwell, Davies and Ake at the back, with Salah, Richarlison, Foden and Ziyech as his and Lucas Moura, as his five in the middle.
So I presume then that the Sterling trade that happened has probably been one of the biggest factors that has increased the number of points he's achieved so far.
Yeah.
Definitely.
If you think of the likes of Phil Foden, Ziyech and Lucas Moura, 34, 33 and 22 points each so far this season, and you compare that to where he is now, not having those three. Well, I guess Ziyech is still in the squad, but losing Foden, Lucas Moura, for example, seems to have bouncing right at the league, as well as Antonio. I think he's got Wilson at the moment, who's done well so far this season with 86 points, I think. Very interesting. Taking into account his original team versus where he is now.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anyone else you think we should pick out?
Have a look at Tom, given the disparity.
Yeah, can do. Yeah, let's have a look.
Yeah, so Team Row would have been, you would have been top had the original drafts stayed in place all season so far with 658 points. He's actually on 593, so he's the only team that has achieved less points than he would have achieved with his original draft. And his original draft team includes Saiz, which I thought was quite interesting, given he's now a free agency, was actually his best defender with 55 points. His best goalkeeper is Messier, with 68 points, and 4-5-1 formation, as you'd expect. Bamford's in there as his striker. His best midfielder would have been Ward-Prowse with 73. De Bruyne has only got 68 points so far this season. Mixed fortunes for Tom. Saka's in there as well with 58, which he no longer has, obviously. Harrison, which he traded quite early. Taylor for Burnley, and Wan-Bissaka, interestingly, for United. So, with that team, he would have been top based on the original draft.
That's interesting, yeah.
Interestingly, Mitrovic doesn't even feature with 34 points. He's on his bench. Jesus doesn't feature with 28 on his bench. And Edison is his second best goalkeeper with 57.
That's not a good stat for Tom, is it, to be the only team in deficit?
No, it's not a good stat for Tom. I think he probably needs to be a bit more active to see himself pull up the league this season if he's going to achieve anything, particularly with the second cup run coming up in the new year.
Yeah, I mean, he's done the most. He's put forward the most amount of waivers out of anybody.
Yeah,
but he's also had the most declined as well. So
yeah,
he might want to look at maybe trading with other managers rather than trying to take from the pool of players left.
Yeah, in a COVID world, are we going to see transfers in January when we don't tend to see that many? I think there's Liverpool that are looking for a centre back, for example. There's Wolves looking for a striker. Which clubs are going to bring in players that are going to be game changers for those towards the bottom of the league? And ultimately, it's a risk, right? I think of players that have come in at Chelsea like Werner and those boys that were signed right at the start of the season. Actually, they haven't quite delivered where you think they would have delivered. So it's always a risk bringing in players that have just been signed by clubs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in January.
Yes, do you think there'll be less actual players being bought and moving clubs and that because of COVID?
Yeah, overall definitely. And then it's just a case of those that do need to buy, like the likes of Liverpool and Wolves. Are they going to find the players they want? And if they do, are they actually going to have the impact that they want them to have?
Yeah.
Van Dijk's probably not replaceable, and Jimenez, depending on how he does second half of the season as to whether he recovers or not, is he replaceable at Wolves? It's quite difficult to see a player out there at the moment that could come in and and do the job he was doing.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to find when is the deadline for the January transfers?
I think it's the end of Jan. So
when can they start? Any time from tomorrow, then, or is it a shorter period?
The window opens on this. I think it's the 2nd of Jan, and then it closes at the end of Jan, early Feb.
Okay, so it's quite a big window.
Yeah,
but we'll see. Be interesting to see how, like you say, how many transfers do go through, and if any of them are going to be big enough to, like you say, impact the teams that make them.
There's also there's a lot of game weeks between now and then, so just resting on your existing team, hoping for players to come in the transfer window probably isn't a sensible strategy because you're missing out on lots of valuable points by not trading between now and then. And what these things are like. They always go to deadline day, so you're probably not going to see those players come through until right towards the end of the window. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what it seems to be a common phrase we say every week at the moment. Who knows? Because we just, as much as we like to try and make predictions on what's going to happen, we just can't. This season has been, up and down all over the place, really, hasn't it? So, but I think do you reckon it's been a good season of football?
It's a lot more competitive this year. If you look at the Premier League table at the moment, you would have thought, Liverpool are only, I think, 3 points clear, and they've actually played a game more than United, who are in second. So, says a lot about their form this season. They've drawn 6. Whereas, last season, I think they went the whole season losing 1 and maybe drawing 1. I can't remember what it was now, but, an unbelievable points tally by the end of the season.
Yeah.
You've got the likes of Leicester, Everton, even Villa are in there, and Villa have still got 2 games in hand in the Europa League places. They could be up there with Liverpool if they win those 2 games. Chelsea, have hit a bit of a dip in form. I think losing 3 out of the last 6. So it's a really mixed bag this season. Tottenham haven't won in 4 after the start they had. So City are down in 8th. It's a real mixed bag, and you're seeing the impact of COVID and not having fans and all those different elements that are making the league so much more competitive this year. The only I'm quite surprised by Sheffield United. I know other managers aren't at all. I know Adam basically said he thought they'd go down. I thought with their back 5 they play with, they'd be quite quite comfortable this year. But 2 points from 16 games, I think they're doomed.
It's not a good place to be, is it?
No, I think it's probably the worst start on record. Must be. Can't be far off.
Did I hear it was joint worst start or something at the moment?
Yeah, terrible. Arsenal, down in 13th. It's real mixed bag, but who knows where we'll be by the end of the season.
Well, we've got a few game weeks until we find out, but I'm sure we're all looking forward to it. I think we'll call it there for now. Thanks for coming on, Laurence. Thanks for your segment, really interesting. I'm sure it's going to spark some conversation in the draft chat.
I'll make sure I share the stats with you. And share with the league. And yeah, thanks for having me on, and best of luck for next game week.
Yeah, and to you, and Happy New Year as well. It's New Year's Eve at the moment, so when this goes out, or maybe just before, it's might be the New Year. So yeah, Happy New Year.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, you too.
Thanks for listening, everybody. This is the DraftCast, and remember, draft is life. See you next time.